Welcome back to the No Mulligans podcast here in the tour shop at Franklin Bridge. We're inching ever so closely to getting in the new learning center. And
it's going to be after the first of the year.
Yeah, well, that's
a bummer.
It's a 2025.
It's a late Christmas gift.
That's right. That's a Christmas gift.
Instead of an early one.
But we've, welcome you guys to the podcast. We've done some really cool stuff on social media in the last couple of weeks. We've really started to up our game there. We're on TikTok at No Mulligans, No Mulligans Pod. Yep. And then on YouTube, you can listen to the No Mulligans podcast. If you type all that in, you'll find us up there. And then, of course, we're here wherever you guys are listening to your podcasts.
And
audio
head covers are still available.
That's right, yeah.
So I got to order them now, so you might be waiting to get it. But
that's right.
Up to 100 people can get in. If you purchase a head cover, it's $100.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to support us and some of the growth we're doing here and big things coming next year. Yeah, they're just there to support us. It's great. And if you buy one, you get entered into a drawing for free lessons for a year.
That's right. And you can find that link if you go over to our Instagram page. That's No Mulligans Pod. That should be the first link down there in our description. So make sure you pop over there or message one of us to see how you can get that if it's not on there. But as far as like we're talking about today.
Well, we can announce. I want to announce an award first.
Oh yes,
it just popped on Instagram.
And it just went on Instagram. Yeah, go for it.
So there's a organization called the NGCOA, which is the National Golf Course Owners Association. They do a lot of partnership with the PGA of America, which is separate for the PGA Tour for those that are newer golfers that are listening.
Yes.
And they're the people like me as a golf professional, right? So head golf professionals, assistant golf professionals, GMs.
Course owners,
that kind of thing. So, but the NGCOA is exactly what it sounds like, National Golf Course Owners Association. There's over 5,000 members in that organization. There's 16,000 golf courses in the United States. So we won the 2024 Player Development Award. They give it out to one club.
Huge. That's so huge.
It's a massive award for us to win. It's a national level award. That's huge, and it's a facility award. So it's not just me, right? So it's me. It's Erica, Elijah, Zach, Braden, the interns that have helped us develop, and even the stuff we do here with the podcast that was a part of our entry,
right?
And how we grow the game, right? It's
player
player development, and like by and large, this podcast has been free other than when we do these like buy head covers,
right?
Like that's really it.
Well, and it's cool too, especially like piggybacking on that award, thinking back, and if you guys go on our YouTube channel, you can find them. Our big podcast that we do on the back porch of Franklin Bridge in the early stage when it was over 100 people. You know, that was a big in for a lot of people to get into the program and to start learning and to get to know you a little bit better as well. So we just thank you guys out there for being a part of the program, and for those of you who are listening to this and are like, oh dang, maybe I want to go take a lesson down there. Hit us up on Instagram.
It's been great.
Figure out how we can help you. So.
It's an honor. It's a lot of fun, and it's kind of nice to see. Obviously, you see your students get better, but sometimes it's nice to be recognized by your peers.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know, because those are the people that see you do what you do, and
that
really understand behind the scenes what it takes to do what we've done so far. So
no kidding.
But anywho, one of the things, you know, as we've had questions come through on Instagram and TikTok and just comments and things like that is, you know, we want to try to bring a little more tip type stuff to people as they're listening. Yeah. As well as continue to be who we are. Yeah,
right? there's two lanes that I feel like we go in, right? And I feel like both of them are equally as important, right? Like the first one, for the sake of simplicity, is just going to be like your tips, right? Your small little tips here and there, what can help you within the round. Right. And then the second avenue is just going to be more that macro, like how you get better as you grow within the game, right? And I think you need both of those things in order to get better, right? Because we need the micro and the macro in order to figure out how we can be the best player we can be.
Yeah, I think that's it's always the challenge, right? It's like, you know, the consumer wants one thing, and you want to make sure that you're providing what they want, but also like being true to who we are and we believe is, you know, there's 1,000 different swing tips that are out there, and we get into them occasionally. And there's stuff on the mindset side that's given by psychologists, and some of it's great, and some of it's just like, does it actually make you better or not? And so we're much more like deep principle type stuff.
Yeah.
And so we're going to get more into like the specific tips. I think it's why our Breaking 80 and Breaking 90 podcasts were so popular.
For
it's
sure.
Like, I can go do this like right now.
Right. And it's more like running a marathon, right? You wouldn't just get these like, hey, like eat these little gel packets to like feel better as you're running. Like you're gonna tell that person
Right.
like you're gonna need to train for this amount of time over this duration in order to build your your tolerance up. So we hope that you guys are finding some of those tips helpful, whether they're gonna be the macro or the micro ones. But this one's gonna be special, and people are gonna like this because we're talking about a more micro
which is
topic right here.
I think this is the one that can get a lot of debates going, is like, how do you know when to adjust on a golf course? You know, there's I was talking with Brooks the other day, and you know, he's like, I didn't think you believed in the dispersion pattern, like uniformity. I was like, well, golf is a game of your average shot.
Yeah.
And I said, I agree with that, and all the great instruction systems agree with that, but like in all reality, that's a ever moving target.
True.
It's never constant, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You can look at your dispersion pattern, and even when you use the apps that like track you while you play, they're considering kind of all the variables, but like how you hit a ball out of the rough, how you hit it out of the fairway, and two lies in the fairway that are this far apart from each other aren't the same. And so that will change what the ball flight does. So like, how much does that average dispersion pattern really matter versus the ability of a player and an athlete to adjust? And so like the average dispersion pattern, which is in my first book, the Champions Playbook, like that's a huge component to make sure that you understand golf isn't like, I need to hit it close here. It's like, no, you need to kind of play away from targets and understand what that general average pattern is. But then when I go play out of the rough or play with a ball in this position, what does that do to my pattern? How does that affect my pattern? How does it affect my golf swing?
Yeah, and you can't just be pin seeking on every single lie that you encounter, right?
Right. So. And, great coaches in other sports understand, like when we run this series of plays and our back's against the wall on our own 40 or our own 30, like these series of things that happen leading up to that, generally speaking, we don't do well when X. And so it's not always about the numbers from the guys with the, headphones on trying to tell you what to do down on the field. Some of it's just the coach instinct of like, this is not going to run well right now. How do you know that? I don't know. It's why the quarterback can make calls on the fly. And some of the best quarterbacks that we've all known are able to do that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I don't care what you think, coach. I'm running this play right now because I know it's going to work. How? There's no data to support it. There's just like, we need to run this.
Yeah, and
I feel that right now.
At the same time, too, if it's 4th and 1, you're not going to run a Hail Mary.
Right.
Like it's the same principle. It's like, what can we do? These, how can we make these minor adjustments to then take what you're saying, that dispersion pattern, and actually go for the shot that we need to hit.
Right, and it's the hard part about trying to talk about this is it's like, how do you know when to adjust? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
The short answer is like, I don't know.
That's what makes it hard to teach, though.
Right. But that's what makes it so much fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's the fact that the answer is, the
target's ever moving.
Right. I was giving a wedge lesson to a gentleman out on the golf course the other day. We had some open holes and doing just some basic chips and pitches from around the green. And I put him in a scenario that was going to make him think. And he's a good player. He's a 3 handicap. And he asked the question. He said, well, what'd you do here? I said, well, I don't know. Like when I step over it, everything for me is an in the moment call.
Well, and question for you too. You say everything's in the moment call. Does it also depend on what you've been doing in the last couple holes as well?
Right.
So it's like when you say I don't know, it's not like there's a one size fits all depending on the lie.
Correct.
It's like what's happening within the round.
Well, in the hole we were on out here was hole number 1. Like, is that my 11th hole of the day? Is it my 3rd hole of the day?
Bingo.
Is it my 1st hole of the day? Have I warmed up? Have I not?
Yeah.
Even though we're talking about a fringe lie, our fringe is a little taller here, but like it's a fringe lie. Let's call it fairway. But it's kind of over across some slopes and down this way, and I moved it far enough where like you could putt it, but it starts to feel odd to putt it with the amount of fringe you got to go through.
Sure, yeah.
And so then you might consider chipping it, but if you chip it, like there's just a lot of little variables that are in there. And so what I told George in that situation, I said, hey, I'm over this shot, and when I stand over it, if I don't see an immediate like this is what I want to do, then that means there's a bunch of variables. There's a
Ooh.
bunch of options.
I like that, yeah.
If I can't step in and like very confidently as a good player go, then that means there's a lot of things I need to consider first and start eliminating. Now you got to be able to do that elimination rapidly, but how do you adjust? I'll get over it and I'll feel it out and go, okay, this is my best option. There's no great option, and so if there's no great option, then that means there's multiple others to choose from.
I like
and
that.
So
yeah.
if I don't have I think the first step for people is like, look at your situation. And I'm literally talking this through right now. So, cause I don't know how to answer this, but I think a good starting point is if you don't see a great option that accounts for a whole slew of variables, then that means there's multiple options that need to be considered.
Yeah.
If there's not oh, yeah, dude, this is easy. It's 20 feet left of the flag. I've got some help from the slopes over there. The wind's off the right. I play a cut. That's perfect. I'll just play it out 20 feet left of the flag. There's trouble right, and I'll just hit my normal stock shot out there. If you don't feel something that's that committed, like, I feel great about this, not just like, I feel pretty good. No, like, I feel great about this, then there's multiple variables that need to be considered that you're probably missing.
And to add on to that, and to reference a previous podcast, if you haven't been playing enough golf, you're not going to understand what those variables are when you encounter them. So we talk all the time about being a range rat out on the range and then playing, 1 round a week or whatever that might be. I'm not saying you need to play 5 rounds a week, but I am saying if you're not playing enough golf, it's going to be hard to recognize those situations when you're in them.
Well, that I'm chuckling because I had a situation with a guy that we were playing out here. I was with another student in a playing lesson. We got paired with somebody, and we're on the side of a hill on hole number 1 after we made the turn, and he hits this terrible dribbler, and he's like, man, I just struggle so much to take my range swing to the golf course. I said, yeah, this doesn't look anything like that, does it? It's just like, I can't take my range swing to the golf course. Well, of course you can't, because it's not the range. It's not the range. Like, you might shoot 75% from the free throw line in practice, but I guarantee you aren't going to shoot that good in the game. That's just the nature of every sport.
Hey, which, like, by the way,
kicking field goals, I don't like whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. There's a difference between practice and there's a difference between the game, right? Same way when you're getting onboarded for a job, right? There's a difference between the training and when you're actually selling to somebody or something like that, Right. So, like, but here's another thing that we can talk about then. We were just inside on the sim.
Right.
How can we add pressure in order to take that range swing to the golf course and hopefully not be that guy?
Well, I think that's one of the benefits of some of these simulator locations. The downside is you may not have real ball flight, but it's pretty dang good. But you can quickly create games that add pressure to you. Just like we were talking back before, like really great players in the breaking 70, they find ways, they seek out pressure, and they seek out increasing levels of it.
So if you guys aren't understanding what we're talking about here in the last 15 seconds, we're about to, or actually we already have, by the time this goes out, we've already posted a TikTok and a YouTube video on our page with Scott and I in the sim over there, and we were trying to add pressure to my golf swing.
Keeping in mind you'd only hit, I think it was 4 golf balls to start.
That's right.
So you'd done some stretching.
No, 2.
Was it 2?
I hit like 2. You were like, dude, I've got nothing to change.
Right. So I was like, dude, it looks great. So now let's go ahead and put pressure on it. So there was no stress. You hit them good. We're great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and put pressure on it. So you can go back and watch the specifics of it. Mm-hmm. But it's essentially like you have to seek out increasing levels of pressure. And so if it's like, well, how much pressure is too much? Well,
as much as you can handle.
Start with too little.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather you start with too little, have success, and then move up. Make it harder, make it harder, make it harder, make it harder.
Yeah, I can see
Maybe
that.
it's, hey, I'm going to look out there in the driving range. I just want to hit 2 balls solid in a row. Like maybe you're just brand new to golf. I just want to hit 2 balls solid in a row. Great. Now, maybe you get a little bit better. It's like, I want to hit 2 balls solid in a row that both land on within a reasonable target on the driving range. Whatever that is. I don't care what it is. Just as long as that thing is ever growing and increasing.
And we were talking inside with your cracking the code class, or I was, and they were talking about well, I can be out on the range and swinging for an hour long, but then sometimes I leave and I don't feel like I got any better. Well,
Yeah.
if you're not focused on one swing thought,
Right.
like we talked about last podcast, one swing thought or one outcome or one challenge that's there in front of you, I mean, you're right. You're probably not getting any better.
No, you're not. And you have to put pressure in your practice. It's not just about getting out there and making a better golf swing, trying to hit it better, trying to do those things. It's about, can I create stress? We talked about the color codes of awareness.
Yeah.
Like, most people are out there, even though they're working on something, they're living in white. They're unaware of, what is the ball doing? Where am I hitting on the club face? What am I doing to create that? Where are my thoughts at? Where's my mind at? Like, all those things are variables. Do I have a singular swing thought? If I don't, then what am I doing? Is my mind wandering? Am I frustrated with the guy behind me that's almost shanking him off my heels? Like, where are you? Like, I can be here and not be here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You
If that makes sense.
Disassociate. Yeah.
Right. Like, I can be here and not be here. And so you can be on the driving range hitting golf balls and not be engaged in the process of learning. And it's not just about making a good golf swing. It's about getting better and improving and learning about your body and the ball flight and centerness of contact and adding pressure. How do I, do under pressure, which we got to see from that as well. It's like, under stress, you start to steer it a little bit. So, that's the adjusting piece, is how do you adjust? What do you adjust? When do you adjust it? And that's first being aware enough to know what to adjust. And so circle this back around. So the first book, The Champion's Playbook, I believe it's chapter 3, maybe it's chapter 2. Athletes are first aware and then they adjust. Awareness is the first piece. If you start adjusting something that doesn't need to be adjusted, then you're in
say that
trouble.
again. Say that again.
So athletes are first aware and then they adjust. If you don't have the right awareness, you're going to adjust to something that's likely not the problem, and in so doing create a different problem.
Yeah.
So, you can see a golf ball that starts to the right of your target. So you're trying to play a draw and you're a right-handed player. You can start a ball that starts to the right and see it draw, but you could have swung across the ball, over the top, out to in, however you want to think of it, across the ball with an open club face, and the ball start right and curve left, because the ball's hit on the toe to a certain degree and it starts out to the right and curves left because of the gear effect of the ball getting hit off the toe.
Yeah.
Right. So I talked about control the strike and control your speed. Like, if you can control those two, then you can start looking at those variables. And we had a guy do it the other day. He had his, consumer level model, Mevo Plus
Launch monitor
that also had club face and club path data, but it wasn't as accurate as TrackMan, which to be expected. It's
for sure
a fraction of the price.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's one of the best models I think on the market, but it didn't pick up the toe strike the way the TrackMan did. And I'm describing a situation that actually happened with a gentleman that I was giving a lesson to the other day. And that right there, he's like, oh, I made a better golf swing. He's like, well, you hit it straighter, but it was hit off the toe enough where that path didn't actually get to the right. The path was still, the left face was open. And so he tries to make the same golf swing he just made, and that one starts to the left and fades to the right because it got hit in the center of the face.
Is this why, like, Bryson too will speed train? And I say that in air quotes, right? Like, speed train, because if you're swinging out of your shoes as hard as you can, if you can learn to keep on swinging, eventually you'll be able to control at a higher speed.
So,
or at least that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. I can't speak towards Bryson specifically, but when you start what I call threshold training, you start trying to swing at the ends of your range, you lose control of the movement, not inherently because you're going faster, but it may be because you're going faster the wrong way, or you could be just having a more difficult time controlling your movement. Going faster doesn't inherently make you worse. Like, the one that's gotten a lot of hits on TikTok is the, like, slow down,
swing slower, shoot lower,
right?
baby.
Like, control your speed and control your strike. And it's fine if you want to do the threshold training, but you don't have control at a slower speed.
Right.
You think you're going to have more control at a higher speed? Like,
100%. Yeah. And I say that speed training to also say that
Right.
the people who are speed training, or at least doing it intentionally, are also pretty hyper aware of
They
their
should be, at least.
strike as
Right.
well, right?
Right.
Because if the strike starts to suffer because of speed, well, then we've just defeated the purpose of training.
Well, and when you raise the threshold, it should, in theory, make it easier for you to train at what was once your maximum. So let's say your
Yeah.
maximum before was 100 mile an hour driver club head speed. If you can push that threshold up to, let's say, 105, 107, then you can live at 100 and have just as much control as you did when you were at 95. And I think that's the challenge, is how do you do that?
Dude, this is why I'm so glad that I came from a baseball background, because I already had the speed. I don't have to train for the speed. It's just like
It's there.
It's the strike at the end of the day, and that's what I've always told everybody, at least that I play with, who might be playing at a lower level. Is it's about the efficiency of the strike, not necessarily how hard or how fast you're swinging the club.
Right. Well, and you're, it's like, oh, you were blessed with speed. It's like, well, no, I played sports that required speed.
Yeah,
at a young
trained
age.
for it for 20 years.
Right,
Yeah.
Right. So like you figure out how to go fast because the sports required you to go fast.
Yeah.
But even in those, you can swing too hard. You can throw pitches too hard.
For
and,
sure.
I'm sure there are guys, I don't know enough about baseball, but I'm sure there are guys out there that are not the fastest pitchers, but man, they can place that ball wherever they want against whomever they want.
Oh yeah.
And
yes.
they probably frustrate the snot out of
Yep.
people.
Absolutely.
Like, how come I can't hit this thing moving at 85, 87, 90? I don't know what slow is, so you can see my lack of
For sure.
understanding on the baseball
Well,
front.
and at the same time, just making a little parallel to baseball, right? I mean, you have to swing very hard to hit the ball a long way, right? But also, too, I mean, think about just pitch recognition. You have a fastball, curveball, slider, changeup. All of these things have different speeds. And so my brain has to recognize the pitch and then apply the force appropriately.
Right.
So you can almost say that baseball players have the best control over their speed because they're having to adjust to it in such a finite amount of time.
Right. So you're training that, and you start on a tee like my son Daniel and Nora Grace have, like they just hit these little soft shots all the time. And so you build up that ability over years.
Right.
Not overnight. And I think it's to kind of talk about the like overnight piece. It's like people want to
or even in the middle of a round.
I think they want to not have to adjust.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Like I think in part of them coming to lessons is people don't want to have to adjust.
Well, and relay that back too to adjusting in the middle of a round too. You said that people don't want to adjust. Well, I would say that can parlay onto the golf course as well.
Well, and they don't want to adjust, but they keep trying to adjust without the awareness to adjust.
Bingo, which takes us back to the awareness piece, right?
And so it's like, what am I aware of? It's there are some players that don't need to adjust at all. They need to run a singular program all the time and just do that. And I think there's a level of discipline there that I think is important. One of the things I do with junior golfers, this is kind of a fun one. I haven't talked about this one in a long time. That I do with junior golfers is I ask them to, when they start getting long enough to be able to go for par fives and 2 or drive greens on par 4s, but par 5s in particular, I tell them define a threshold for each par 5, knowing that they're not all made the same, right? Like some have more trouble around the green than others.
Sure.
Some you're not as comfortable with, but define a threshold. Let's say for a kid it's 215 yards. If I am 216 yards, I'm not going for it.
I love that.
No matter the situation, I'm not going for it. So it's learning. To me, there's discipline that then allows you to learn when to adjust.
Well, and piggybacking off of that, let's just play the nightmare scenario, right? Like, let's say we decide to hit it at 216 yards.
When I'd already committed to not.
It goes in the water, right? Okay, now we got to pull back, hit a penalty, get onto the green again, putt. We're probably doubling that.
I never should have gone for that. That's so dumb.
Right.
Like,
and then
maybe it wasn't.
And then take it onto the next tee box, right? Like, you can see how even just giving yourself these little boundaries can change your entire round.
And you can actually make yourself more conservative by being too aggressive too early.
Ooh.
Not always.
Yeah.
Like, shoot. But I've done it. And a lot of great players have been too aggressive too early. You have to learn to not be afraid. So you got to do some of that. But I think there's value in discipline of, in this situation, I am not going to blank. So many people, the number of lessons we have, I would say it's probably not huge, but 10 to 15% of lessons people I want to learn how to hit my long irons. And so they'll like grab their 5-iron to start the lesson. I'm like, well, let me see, hit your 7 or your 8.
Yeah, let's get this strike down first.
7 or 8 isn't any good. What are we worried about the 5 for?
Yeah.
Like the thing we're gonna fix in the 7 8 is gonna be the same thing we're gonna fix in the 5.
Right.
Let's have some success with it first here. This is the adding the right amount of pressure at the right time. So let's not jump to this thing, but I need the 5. No, you don't. So like, this is one of my favorites in terms of a strategy piece on the golf course. Well, I need to hit a 5-iron. I'm no good at hitting a 5-iron. Like, what do you need a 5-iron for? Well, I have this, and this hole that I need to hit it on. It's like, well, what do you make when you hit it? I'm like, well, I make doubles and triples and whatever. I can make par, but if I could hit that, I can make par, I can maybe make birdie.
Let's just make par first, man.
Tour players are making less than 4 birdies a round.
Yeah.
So what are we doing trying to chase more birdies, A, but B, you don't need a 5-iron. So the vast majority of greens, do some quick math for you. The vast majority of greens are roughly 30 to 35 yards deep. For easy math, let's just call it 30. So you've got a front third and a middle third and a back third. And you also have, if the pin's in the middle, it's 15 yards front and back. So let's say the pin's in the middle.
Yep.
You've got 15 yards to the front of the green. Like, if you're good, are you good at hitting a 7-iron, sir? Yes, I am. All right. You like your 7-iron? I love my 7-iron. I practice with it all the time. Great. So if the pin's in the middle of the green and you got a 5-iron distance, what's wrong with being 5 yards short of the green?
There's nothing wrong with being 5 yards short of the green.
Right. Like it's, maybe there's a bunker there. Okay, well then play an 8 and play short of that and then go over.
Yeah.
Right, there's a lot of options in the vast majority of situations. Somebody's going to spout out, well, I have this one hole over here. I can't do that. It's like, well, figure out something else. There's always another route than just having to grab the 5-iron. Like, I don't have to play the really crappy player off the bench, like, who hasn't started for me all year. Like, if he's played terrible in the last 4 games, I don't care how good or bad the game is going. I do not have to put him in.
Well, and to that point as well, right? It's like those rounds where you do, come up short, you chip it close, and then you putt it in. All right, on to the next hole. Like, those are the rounds that are the most stress-free over the course of the entire of all of your golf rounds that you play over the course of a year. Those are the best ones when you're like, all right, came up a little bit short, chip it close, putt it in. Like, we're done.
Right.
Move to the next one. It's like, take your chances where you can get them, but don't try and force chances to your par 5 example, right?
And people think because I have all the clubs in my bag, I have to hit them all.
Yeah, and I fall victim to that.
Yeah, you don't have to.
All the time.
Shout out to Steven. He's in our Cracking the Code winter program.
Yep.
And we're having them play with 5 clubs right now. And so one of them's a putter, so they only get to choose 4 others. And so, and this is for 2 months. I'll probably take it longer than 2 months. They don't know that yet unless they're listening.
What would you choose if you had to do that?
Ooh. If I'm only playing with 5 clubs,
I think I would go.
I've got my putter.
Yeah.
I'm going to use my 50-degree wedge.
I was going to go 54. I'd go 8-iron after
then
that.
I would go 8 as well.
I'd probably go 6. Oh no, I don't think I'd go 6. I might go 5.
I'd go 5 hybrid after the 8, iron. And then I'd go probably 3 wood not driver.
I think I'd go 2-iron. I think I'd take my driver and woods out of the bag.
That's fine. That's fine. And so then it's because then you start assessing where I'm going to place the golf ball. And so we gave him the option. So we talk about it this way. So if you're only going to play with 5 clubs, and the reason why this is a great exercise is A, it gets you outside the box.
Yep.
B, it lets you see you don't need all the clubs in your bag. And C, it just kind of opens you up.
You play the course so differently. We've talked about...
You think about it differently. All of a sudden, even when you're picking your clubs, you're all of a sudden thinking strategically. Most of the time, people walk out there like, I got to make a good swing. You're not even thinking about that when you're grabbing 5 clubs.
And how many times have we talked on the podcast about like playing the course the same way you always do? It's like it plays different every single day. Right. It plays different every 3 hours, you know?
And so we said, think of it this way. So since it's basketball season, it's a great way to think about this. If you are the head coach and you're having to pick 5 starters, you got 14 people who've tried out for the team. You've got 5 starters. One of them has to be a putter, right? You have to have a point guard, basically,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
You got to have a point guard guy who can dribble and handle the ball. Who are your other 4? So you have to pick those 4 starters. They are starting the game. You want them to play as much of the game as you can possibly play. If they had the stamina to play all 4 quarters.
If you didn't have to give them a rest for a shot,
Right,
what
in
would
golf
pick?
you don't have to,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So, who are your other 4?
Oh, I'm not going to play my 8. My 8's tired right
And
now.
like be honest about it. Like, who are your best 4 players on top of the putter? And then we said, all right, once you have those, then you get to pick 2 bench players. So you'd have 7 people on your roster.
Yep.
So you've cut your team from 14 players to 7. So none of you made the team. And so for the next 2 months, we're doing that. So Steven and a couple other guys have enjoyed the benefits of this that are in the program. But Steven played the front 9 and he used some of the spares off the off the front. And then he didn't use any of the spares, only used his starting 5 on the back, shot 200 par.
Wow. Which that's big, because Steven was saying that he's shot maybe 1 under or 2 under, but like
1 under. I think once he shot under par once this year. That was his goal.
But that was the only time he's done it on both sides.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he did it just on the back 9. He shot a couple over on the front and then shot 2 under on the back. It's like,
wow, that's cool, man.
Like, that's the power. If you only play with clubs, you're good at hitting. But I can't get to the ground. It doesn't matter if you can't get to whatever. We hear teams talk about this. We got to play our game. We can't play a hurry up offense. We're not going to try and match them for a hurry up offense.
For sure.
We're going to play this long, slow, control the ball. We're going to just control the clock. That's maybe our game. We just give them less opportunities, right? So is it the only way to win? No, but is it your best? Probably. Pick 5 clubs, plus you're going to get confident. And then when you're thinking about the next 2, that 6 and 7 person, you're going, all right, which ones can I count on? Like, you're thinking from a completely different starting point than when you go, all right, I'm going to go play. I got my bag, got my 14 clubs. I'm going to pull this club on the first hole.
And so what does this do in terms of like our topic for today of like adjusting mid-round or adjusting to round after round? Like, what does that do for somebody?
Well, in the the funny part about only having 5 clubs is 2 things happen. One, you don't adjust because you only have 5 to choose from. Well, you technically only have 4 to choose from if you count your putter out. But you only have 5 clubs, so your options to adjust to are minimal. But in the same token, right, I know what you're about to say. In the same token, you have to adjust because you're going to be between clubs more often. So then you're thinking about, okay, if I don't hit the green with this club, where do I want to place it? Where can I hit it that's safe and I can make no worse than bogey? And so you both simultaneously learn the discipline of not thinking outside the box and only playing clubs you're confident in hitting, and you have to adjust.
This is what I'm learning right now. For example, earlier this fall, I went on a trip to Charlotte to go watch the Tennessee Vols play, and me and my 2 college roommates, we ended up playing a round of golf on that Friday before the game.
Watching baseball?
No, football. Sorry,
football. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But we went to Charlotte to go watch the Vol football team play. But we played golf on that Friday, and so it was a course that none of us had seen. We just got a recommendation from a friend who lived out there.
Don't hit your ball in a place you can't see.
Bingo. And so it was, to give you guys some context, it was one of my buddies who is scratch or better. And then you have me, and then you have one of my other buddies who has gotten into golf within the last year and a half or so.
So he's your 90s plus shooter.
Yes. And so, long story short, my scratch friend, he's just taking irons off the tee, and the first like 3 or 4 holes, I'm like, well, we got room to hit driver here. Let's hit driver. Guess who was like making birdies on those first couple holes, and guess who was slicing them out of bounds on off the tee, right?
Oh, that's so funny.
I was just having a huge epiphany while you were saying that, because I'm like, especially on a course that you haven't seen before,
right?
Hit it into a safe place,
right? Hit it into a place you can see, and especially at the length that you can generate. Your cruising speed's 120 on the driver, so like it's at your length. At your current scoring level of a high single-digit handicap is how you're likely on a golf course you're unfamiliar with, that ball is going to be finishing in a place that you can't see, at least in part.
Yeah.
And so, whereas if you were to go to an extreme, right, if you were going to hit a 7-iron off of every single tee shot, that ball would go into a place you can see on every single time. Even if it's
what we're talking
water,
about
even if it's
on this.
bunker.
Yeah, bingo. Bingo.
If you're playing a golf course blind, do not hit a shot into a place you can't see unless you have to. And if you can't see it, not everybody plays in carts. How long does it take to drive your cart to the top of the hill or around the corner to see what you want and drive back? Like, how long does that take? 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Just don't waste your time when you get up to your shot. Like,
Right.
be making that decision as you're driving up there and driving back.
Right.
Okay, I think I'm going to play this when I get back. Like, you want to give yourself the ability to see what's going to happen before it happens. So familiarity, to me, breeds confidence. If you're unfamiliar, it's why people play at their home golf course so well and they go somewhere
All
else.
the time,
It's part of the reason.
Right.
It's like, I'm just unfamiliar. I'm not sure of the break. I'm not sure how much it's going to check. Like, this rough is different than my rough. So I don't, all those things. It's why tour players play multiple practice rounds is, well, maybe there are holes that make you uncomfortable that didn't make you uncomfortable when you played it blind, but now you're like, ooh, gosh, that's a hard hole.
Well, too, and like I also got the opportunity to play at the Grove this year as well.
Oh, that's right.
Right after Live too, and dude, talk about color codes of awareness. I just went straight into black. Yeah, and I mean that's like a spot where if you're not trained on like a difficult golf course like that, or if you're not exercising these principles that we're talking about, hitting it into a place that you can see, making a comfortable swing, like you can get in trouble really quick on those courses.
And you can't adjust when you're in black. So if you're not sure about you can't. It's not possible.
That's
you also
so
can't
true.
adjust when you're in white because you're unaware.
Yeah.
So if you haven't listened to our color codes of awareness, we talked about that on.
It was like 3 podcasts ago.
Yeah, with Robbie Fields.
Yeah, it was with Robbie. Yeah.
We talked about the color codes. So, and you can also just look up color codes of awareness.
Yeah, I think that one specifically is going to be on building a championship program with Robbie Fields.
Yep.
So yeah.
So knowing where you're at emotionally is huge. So in order to adjust, you have to be clear-minded. You can be stressed and nervous, but you can't be panicked and you can't be oblivious. You have to live in that sweet spot. And so when we put you through that exercise in there, like you're pretty chill, making good golf swings. I'm like, all right, now I'm going to make you all of a sudden have to heighten your awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And you struggled on your first few, then you got it, did well. Then we went to the 6-iron, and then
bang, bang, bang.
Like you actually did better with the 6-iron than you did with the 8.
Yeah, at 195.
Right. And so, but that's because we were raising that level of awareness, and you did well enough at the 8-iron, even though you didn't pass the test. You got 2 in a row twice. So
yeah, that's right.
We were able to go ahead and bump you up. So, in order to, I guess, like, how do I want to end this? Like it's
well, and speaking to that too, talking about like the 8-iron versus the 6-iron as well. With my swing, the more loft you give me, the more I'm going to be more apt to tugging a ball left, right? Trying to either take the loft off or try and gas it a little bit that ends up in a closed club face, right? So it's like you really have to be aware of your tendencies with different clubs in your bag as well to know how you're going to hit those under pressure.
Well, and it's. I told you in there, I said, all right, you missed one left, then you hit the next one right. I was expecting that.
For sure. And that didn't surprise me either.
Well,
yeah.
in part because your awareness is high enough where you can make those adjustments.
Yeah.
Just like a good pitcher can do that. And
yeah,
I think to me, this is where like golf, the closest part of baseball to golf, in my uninformed opinion, is pitching is very similar to, because you're the only one you're not adjusting to anything on the fly. Everybody else is adjusting to you. The batter's adjusting to you. All the base runners are.
That's a good point. Never
the
thought about
fielders
that.
are adjusting.
Yeah.
You're controlling the game. You and the catcher are in charge of what's happening, but the catcher's reacting to how you actually throw it, not just how you wanted to throw it.
It's funny. The catcher really is like your TrackMan out there. If you think
that's
kind of
cool because he's seeing.
Well, he's seeing it. He's also seeing your tendencies, and he's telling you how to adjust.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And so it's the ability to be aware of what's happening is very, very difficult. And so I just looked at it. I was like, hey man, that's that steering thing you're getting into. Like, don't steer it. You know what happens to pitchers when they start guiding pitches? Just swing it. Just swing it, control the speed, control the strike. And that's so easy to come down to when you go play. Like, what should I think about when I play? Control the speed and control the strike.
We were talking about
Control
that
the
on
speed, control
literally the
strike.
last podcast.
I know, we've said that in like 4 podcasts in a row. Like,
well, and that's like, we were also, what is that stat too? You can only have X amount of swing thoughts in your head?
right. So the brain needs a minimum of 0.2 seconds to be able to 100% guarantee your ability to change.
You know what my swing
thoughts.
thought was when we were in there? Just inside takeaway.
Right, so you have one,
time.
and that's off the ball too, so you actually have more time to think about that because it's right before you swing it.
It's off the ball, and it gives me more time to actually be an athlete and react on the downswing instead of being like, oh, I need to finish like that over there.
And so it's, oh, I missed it left, oh, I missed it right. It's like, nope, I just got to trust this one piece and ride with it. And you did, and it works. And so it's, but then getting to see, like, all right, now you got sit, and he got 3 in a row. And then I said, all right, now we're going to narrow your window. We're going to cut it in half. So the cool part about TrackMan is it had an 18-yard circle and a 9-yard circle. And I said, all right.
That 9-yard circle is tough, man.
Well, and it's in part tough because you're trying to make sure it goes in there.
Right.
Rather than
100%.
just make as good of a movement as you can and let it go.
So talk a little bit more on that, because I think when a lot of golfers get up to par 3s, right, it's a lot of that steering. And I think about my nemesis hole out here, at least on the par 3s, number 12, right, where you have a skinny hole that you can't really see all the green on it.
Every par 3, with the exception of 9, you cannot see the surface, most of the surface of the green.
That's fair. Yeah. 14.
And 14's really narrow right to left.
Yeah, that's
14 for the majority of that green is only about 12 yards wide.
Whether you can see it or you can't see it, there's very much a target that is reachable for everybody depending on where your tees are, right? So it's like, how can we adjust when we're on those kind of par 3 tees to just swing our best swing and not worry about guiding it? Because it seems pretty obvious that a lot of people would want to guide it.
Right.
But we all know that in order to hit a hole in one or just to be, in flow state, you're just going to try and hit the ball.
Well, the average tour player is over par on par 3s, first and foremost. No, it's not much. It's like the last number I saw was a few days ago. I think it's 3.08.
Wow, I did not know that.
They're over par. So stop. Like, if they're over par, why are you trying to be even or under?
Yeah.
So, and Tiger talked about this on par 3s, regardless of where the flag was when he was playing in his prime, he would just aim for the center of the green on par 3s.
See, that seems so like, no way Tiger Woods would do that, right?
Like, now, he might hit it close some of the time, but he's just going dead center of the green on par 3.
So is he making, let me ask you this, is he going dead center and then making maybe a minor adjustment that will be like, well, if it ends up close, it ends up close?
Well, I think that's assumed for most of those guys, is like, I'm going to play away from the flag knowing my miss might end me here.
But if you got a flag on the right side, it's like, hey, I'm going to play this with a little bit of a cut towards the middle. If it gets there, it gets there.
He knows that, like, if he can just make pars on par 3s, he's going to be ahead of the field.
Yeah.
If I can make 4 pars on par 3s, I win.
Yeah, and what was also one of Tiger's
That's all I had to do.
What was also one of Tiger's great abilities, of the many things he was good at, lag putting.
Right, it's fine. Like, and he could 2-putt from anywhere. It's not a big deal. And
Exactly.
so what if I've got 60 feet and I blow it 5 feet by the hole? I'm going to make that one. I'm not worried about it.
Well, and we talked about that too on his famous
putts.
on his oh gosh, what was it? One of his famous shots. He was ahead in the tournament, just hit it to the middle and ended up just 2-putting, but it was a tough flag that he had to go at, and he was in a playoff situation.
Oh, you're talking about the one out of the one I think the one you're thinking about is he had to make birdie to tie to go to the playoffs.
Yes, that's right.
And he hits it 25 feet away from the flag,
knowing that he has to make birdie.
Right, like he wanted the aggression to be on the birdie putt, not the aggression to be on the approach shot. It's all over water. So, like, if it hits it in the water, he's toast. Or here's my other thing. If it gets close to going in the water, you go, ooh. Like that feels different than just a confident swing into the middle of the green. Because the other thing is, you're going to have a playoff hole coming if you make the putt.
Yeah.
So you want to make that putt going, I made that, not, I almost didn't make it, right? Like
great point.
Golf, we don't talk about momentum very much. But momentum's a thing, and the easiest way to regain control of momentum when you play in the game of golf is to hit only clubs you're good at hitting to spots you feel comfortable making sure it doesn't get into trouble. Now, it may not hit the green, it may not even hit the fairway, but it doesn't get you into trouble. And I think that's hard to get across to people. You're just trying to not make doubles.
So let me ask you this then, going back to our on-course scenario, let's just say we're on 12 right now.
Mm-hmm.
No, like, let's just say the flag's on the left side, right, or left middle-ish.
Right.
would it be appropriate then just to say, hey, I'm just going to shoot the front of the green and make the best swing I can to that number, and then try and get up and down?
You could. Absolutely. You'd have an uphill chip pitch, and depending on where the flag is, like I typically just try to go for the middle of the green there on 12. Now, I might have a far second shot, but I'm not making worse than 4 there.
Yeah.
It's a hard par 3, especially from the tips. You're pushing 200 yards typically into the wind, those types of things. So,
to a blind green, skinny green.
Yeah, I think.
Well, actually, not really. It just feels like it when you're on the tee.
I think the first assumption people need to make, I'm trying to bring it all back home, is that's why it's so hard to give a distinctive answer on like, well, how do you adjust? I don't know, man.
Depends on what you're adjusting.
It depends on what you're adjusting and when. And I think most people are adjusting the wrong thing. Most people are trying to adjust on the golf course their swing first and their strategy second. It's not the other way around. Now, yes, people occasionally will get into the, well, I just don't hit driver, just hit 4-iron off the tee. Like, that's a version of it, but it's such a small drop in the bucket in terms of like knowing that I can go to a strategy, position. It's, being in the rough and deciding to just pop it out, 20 yards short of the green with a 9-iron instead of trying to hit 7-iron on the green. It's that kind of stuff, or intentionally leaving a putt short from, 15 feet because you've hit your first 4 way too hard.
Well, so
like it's choosing your miss. Most people feel out of control and then they try to adjust. I would say this: when you feel out of control, the last thing you want to try to do is make an adjustment, because you're not adjusting from a place of strength. You're adjusting from a place of weakness.
So let me ask you a question here, because we always talk about how the body, or the mind, always, its job is to get the club face to hit the golf ball, right? So is it safe to assume that? Well, it might not be safe to assume, but it's a good question. If we're more worried about the strategy, I'm more confident in my body's ability to make the swing that I want to make, knowing where the strategy's going, rather than saying, oh, I need to make sure that my left elbow's here and my right elbow's here, and then I'm coming this on the ball. Like, to me, when you do that, you're just trying to adjust those individual factors instead of figuring out where you're hitting it.
Well, and that's the danger of a sport like golf is, what are you adjusting to? Like, what are you reacting to? That's what makes golf so difficult.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing to react to. You're reacting to nothing. And so, having a clear picture in your head of what you want the ball to do is kind of the first thing to react to, and then you need to go quickly.
Well, that's the reaction, right? It's like, hey, this is what I want it to look like. Now hey, body, do this so I can make that shape.
Right. Well, how do I do that, Scott? Well,
that's a lot of practice.
That depends on the person. It depends on what they specifically need to work on. And I still think, and this is why I've got 3 books on the topic and why we've done this podcast, is the default for everybody when they're playing is fixed golf swing, fixed golf swing, fixed golf swing. It's like, that may be the default system, but you don't have to reboot the thing every time. Like, don't reboot the system and go back to default.
Yeah.
Go to something simpler, and that's usually a strategic error somewhere. Make confident swings to conservative targets is something, I've said for a long time, and I've heard said for years, is make a really conservative target and just make a confident swing. You got plenty of room. Well, if it doesn't go where I want, who cares? It's not going to go where you want exactly anyway.
And this is also parlaying back to our podcast about you can play better without a rangefinder.
Oh, yes. I just spent a couple hours on the phone with a college coach the other day, and we were both talking about how much I hate the rangefinder, because everybody's first default is to shoot the yardage. Their default is not to look at the situation, not look at the lie. Where do I want it? What can I do? Like, when you start looking at like what you want to do first, okay, I'd like to hit it here. Well, how far is it, Scott? I don't need to answer. That'll be the last piece. Once I'll answer that.
You're
piece
right,
last.
dude. The distance really needs to be the last thing.
It needs
considered.
to be the very last thing you consider.
Yeah, that,
because you can look at the whole situation and go, where do I want to go? And go, okay, I kind of want to go over here. Like, it would be really bad if I hit it over there. Don't even look at yardage plates. So this is the cool part about here is we don't have any yardage plates on the golf course for the most part. And so you're having to just, okay, kind of over here is where I'd like to be. All right, now how far is it over there? Like, that would be the very last thing. What's my lie? Where do I want it to go? What kind of options might I have here? Like, it looks like I might have to have a long iron, but I'm not hitting my long irons good. So could I hit a shorter iron? Yeah. Where would I go if I did that? I go over here where there's water here. How do I get? I'm about to hit a longer club now, just to get over the water. Like, where would I go? Okay, I'd have to go over. Like, you're starting to think differently.
Yeah, one of my favorite things on the golf course, especially playing with less skilled people, is like when you're at a really close wedge distance. They're like, "Well, what's the yardage?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just gonna feel it," and like that's how it works.
How far is this jump shot? I don't know, man.
Yeah, like
doesn't matter.
Hey, ref, time out. I'm gonna measure what it is from the hoop to where I'm standing. Okay, it's 16 and a half feet. Okay, that means I'm gonna do this much. It's like, no, man, just shoot the shot.
But Scott, like, so many people have been successful with a clock system. Like, I'm not opposed to it, but how many of those people could be better without it? Like, you're making an assumption that that's the best.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a nice short-term period of time thing to work on, but the whole idea of a clock system to me is so unathletically based. And I get it, golf is static and you have the ability to do that. You don't have the ability to do that shooting a jump shot. You don't have the ability to do that, fielding a ball. Like, you
Now, here's where I'll push back, and we've mentioned him on this podcast specifically, is Bryson, right? Bryson is one of the famous people who does the clock system. Now, the difference with Bryson is Bryson, he's not, number one, he's a nut, but number two, he's pairing, let's say, a 1030, like just whatever that word is, right? 1030 with a feel, right?
Right, and he's constantly checking it with an actual launch monitor.
Bingo.
That's why he's got it out on every single swing on the driving range.
Yeah.
And he takes it out on the golf course in his practice rounds. Like, I want to know, because that will change. Like, that's the other thing about 10 o'clock will not always hit at the same distance. You're assuming that your 10 o'clock swing will always hit at 60 yards. And I've taught it to players, and it's worked for them. And maybe it's a short-term stepping stone, but I just think that people are more talented than that. I just fundamentally think people are more skilled than that. Like,
I like your assumption in that. I like your assumption in that, man. That's the you can do hard things thing. It's like,
I need a clock system. No, you don't.
Yeah, no.
How far is it? If I gave you $100 to land it in my hands without a system, and I give you 5 swings to do, you get pretty dang close.
Dude, I love when you do that, specifically with younger players. Is you pull out a $100 bill out of your wallet, and you're like, if I was to give you this after you make the correct movement, could you do it? And you see their eyes light up. They're like, well, of course I could, right?
I've given money away to students before doing that. It's like, the point is, like, when it matters enough, you'll actually do it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be uncertain. Like, if you're that uncertain about swinging the golf club, like, why are you playing a sport? Go do something else.
Yeah, that's a fair play.
Why?
That's fair.
Why put that stress on yourself? Like, just feel it out. We actually did this with Erica without the rangefinder. I went out and caddy for her one day when she was in her senior year at Longwood, and I said, let's play without the rangefinder. No rangefinder. You just feel it. I'll answer any questions that you have. I'm also not going to give you a number. I'm just going to feel it out. Her average proximity with a wedge in particular was cut in half. She was averaging like close to 40 feet with a wedge between 50 and 110 yards. And she cut it to, I believe the number we had it at was, for that day, because she went and kept playing, I believe that number was just under 20 feet. She cut it in half with no rangefinder, because it's all feel. You can feel that.
I love that too as well, like with the game, the Riptide game that we played with Robbie as well. Right. It's like each swing is going to be a different yardage, and you're going to have to feel it. Like, yes, you know a general yardage of where it's at.
Right.
Same way if you're on the golf course. But it's like, hey, hit this, now hit another one, now hit another one, now hit another one. Long story short, you're not hitting the same 50-yard shot every time. You're practicing that feel, practicing what it looks like to see a target that far out, and then executing on that. Like,
I find that Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, I mean, that's it. Like, just, and what do you say too? You don't like for a student to hit 10 shots in a row with the same club in a general
That would
principle.
be my max.
In a general principle.
Right. No, I don't want you to hit the same club 10 times in a row. Like, change it.
For the same reasons, right? It's a feel game. It's like, it's an instinctual game. It's a reaction game. A lot of people just try and make it too static, I think.
Right. No, I would agree with that. And then where was I going with that? The ability to adjust. Oh, like if you hit one, you can't tell that one went shorter, hit the next one harder. Well, well, then I hit it too hard. Well, then I hit the next one softer. Well, then I hit it too soft. Well, I hit the next one a little harder. Like, get more refined with your touch and feel. And I find a lot of people that are wanting the clock system from me are typically also players who, what am I trying to say, are also struggling with their strike. We've talked about this before. You want to, well, let's get the strike good first. We're back to control your speed, control your strike, right? Let's get the strike solid. If the strike's solid on the vast majority, or the amount that you're off on each swing isn't very much, then it makes it really easy for you to go ahead and then adjust. Like if you're not striking at the same every time, it's going to be very difficult to control your distance.
This is so interesting how
fix
we
your strike, and then you can worry about distance control. And you, by and large, most of you don't need a clock system.
It's just
shoot free throws.
We literally tried to create a podcast today with like tips that you can take to the golf course, but it's really control your speed, control your strike.
It's going to be our
if you can do those
motto.
things. I mean, like, and it goes back to
Put that on a hat.
the game that I was playing 2 weeks ago, right? Like, make the motion bigger if you hit it solid, and if you don't hit it solid, make the motion smaller. Like, if you can do that. And speaking of today, you were just like, what do you hit your 8-iron? And I was just like, okay, like, let's just say 165. And it's like, bang, right there.
Right. You were like, I hit it 165, 170. I said, let's start at 160 while you're warming up for 2 swings. And it went a little farther than that on your second swing. So I said, all right, that's fine.
But
now I went ahead and bumped it up. Like, you were just warming up, and I didn't want you to have to go harder. So I intentionally set it shorter.
Correct. And you wouldn't have taken it longer if my strike was not quality.
Correct. I would have kept you there.
Right. So it's like you can graduate so long as your speed and your strike are controlled.
And I told you through that exercise as you were going through, I was like, just, hey, there's that left-right thing going. Don't try to fix that. Control your speed, control your strike, control your strike, control your strike. Like, if you control those two things, you can do fine. You got to jump to the 6-iron and freaking smoked it. And so I think the thing I want to leave y'all with, go do the 5 club game, 7 club game. Don't just do it once. I just think people try something one time. I was like, you're not going to learn anything one time. Not anything meaningful enough to do it one time. Like, go and do it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Like, go play it for the winter. Just play it through the winter.
Which is amazing.
Play it through March.
Doing that in the winter too. We talked about this. You and I talked about this off air. It's like in the winter, you're not going to be hitting it far anyway, right? Your hand, your whole thing, your whole body's cold. Your hands are frigid. You know, the club's not gonna. You're not gonna swing the club as hard. It's not gonna go as far. So just focus on swing and strike, and just speed and strike, and work through the winter with that.
Right, and that will go a long way. And then that also decreases the number of variables you got to try to choose from. And you don't have to try to hit fancy shots. Just hit your favorite swing with your best swing with every club, like those 5 or 7 clubs. So 7 clubs max, 5 if you really want to challenge yourself. Just who are your 5 starters? Putter has to be 1, so you got 4 others, and you got 2 bench players.
I love it.
And take the others, just put them in your car for 3 months. Put them in your trunk.
Sweet, man.
Don't pull them out.
I love that.
So,
well, that's going to do it for us here on the No Mulligans podcast. Remember that we're on everywhere that you guys are as far as social media goes. Make sure you follow us on TikTok at No Mulligans Pod. If you want to watch the video version of this podcast, you can cruise on over to YouTube and type in No Mulligans Podcast. And then, of course, we're here wherever you guys are listening to your audio podcast. So our head covers are still live. If you go to our Instagram, that's No Mulligans Pod. And it's going to be the first link in our description. Remember that it's a $100 head cover. It's really nice. And you get entered into a chance to have a year's worth of lessons for free with none other than Mr. Scott Hassey here. So we're going to sign off here from Jack, Scott, and Zach here in the tour shop here at Franklin Bridge. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Peace.